girls, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Rye and this is Rye's Reading Corner. And today I'm going to share with you my top 10 books of 2021. Again, hello, I'm Rye and this is Rye's Reading Corner. If this is the first time you've seen my face or if you have not yet hit the subscribe button, please do so. It's super easy and really helps my channel grow. So as you can tell by my thumbnail and my little introduction, today I am doing the customary end of the year video where I'm going to share with you my top 10 books of 2021. So this was super difficult because I am the most indecisive person you will ever meet. Honestly, if you ask me on a different day, the top 10 books would probably be the same, but they could be in like the different order. Probably like numbers 4 through 10 could probably be swiped in and out in different orders. My top 3 are pretty solid, but after that, it gets really difficult. So this year has been a great reading year for me. I will do a final stats video, but I've read the most books I think in a year that I've ever read. And I really feel like I found my soft spot in terms of what I love and looking for in reading. And I think that's why I had so many 5 stars this year, which was why I made this video so difficult to do. But I would not be a video if I did not have some honorable mentions. So these are the ones that I could have on this top 10. It was really hard not to have on here. Some of them I had on here then took off. So we're going to start with my honorable mentions. I will timestamp down below if you want to skip my honorable mentions and just go right to my top 10. If you want to see my top 3, 2, whatever you want. Again, I will timestamp. So my first honorable mention is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is a book that I had wanted to read in 2020, just never got to it. So I'm glad I got to it in 2021. This is about our main character. Her name's Nora, and she is stuck in this like in between of life and death, and she goes to this library where she is able to visit kind of like alternate lives that could have potentially have been hers. It kind of gives me like a Christmas Carols feel. This story is very character driven. Definitely have to be in the right headspace to read this. I really enjoyed this story. I thought it was very clever. And yeah, I really liked it. All right, the next one that gets an honorable mention is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is one of those ones that I had in my top 10 and then switched out last minute. This is a thriller. It was Colleen Hoover's first thriller, and I thought it was done super well. Pretty much it is about this story. Her name is, I think it's Lowen. She's a struggling writer, and then she kind of gets the break of her life when asked to come to Verity Crawford's house to finish the stories that she has been writing. She's like this huge, maybe she write horror thriller, I'm not sure, author. And they aren't really sure why she has been picked. But she goes to like live in the house pretty much to go through all of Verity's things to kind of help continue writing this series that she's been writing. And some things come out as she's finding things. It's really good. I think why I kind of docked it off my top 10 is there is the romance. I mean, Colleen Hoover is a romance author, but I feel like it didn't really need it to be in there. And I think that's kind of why I knocked it eventually off my top 10. But this thriller was so good, so many unexpected turns, and I was really excited. I hope Colleen Hoover writes more thrillers in the future. All right, so my next honorable mention is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I really loved this one. I don't know why I've been putting off reading this one for so long. This twist is a twist that I have never really could see coming. I thought it was going to go a couple different ways, but not the way that it ended up going. Yeah, it was a really good time. It was a really quick read. It's really short chapters, which I absolutely love. And yeah, I don't really know why this isn't in the top 10. I just feel like there are some other books that definitely just captivated me more than this one. But again, it was a very strong 5-star read for me, a thriller that I will 100% recommend to other people. All right, my second to last honorable mention is Act Cool by Toby McSmith. So if you've been on my channel before, you know I am a Toby McSmith stan. Their writing is just, I love it. I love their stories, and I think this message that they tell is absolutely amazing. So we have our main character here, and the character's name is August, and August has left his home because he is not accepted by his family. He is a trans man, and he wants to pursue a career in acting. So he makes a deal with his parents, or I think it's his mom and his stepdad, that if they let him go to New York City, he will present female. Obviously, he does not, because he is not a female. He cuts his hair off as soon as he gets there. And so right now he's trying to navigate this world of being able to be his true self for the first time, as well as his parents still calling him by his dead name, and their beliefs, if, you know, they don't believe that what he's doing is right. And it was, I think, super just a great read for young readers, and I absolutely love the messages that Toby McSmith shares. I absolutely love this cover. Why it's not my top 10, I honestly don't know. I think just YA is, you know, as I'm getting older, I think YA doesn't hit as well for me, especially just more of YA contemporaries. But this book is just everything to me. I love Toby McSmith. Stay Gold is one of my favorite books, also by this author. I have the hard copy, paperback copy, and I will definitely get the paperback copy as soon as this comes out. But this book was amazing, and go read it. All right, so my last honorable mention is a little duology, and this is There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark and There Is No Devil by Sophie Lark. So I read both of these in less than 48 hours. This romance is a dark romance about a serial killer and an artist, and please, please, please check out the trigger warnings for this because they are heavy, that is for sure. I read this on KU, loved it so much. I had to buy my physical copies of these ones. I honestly don't really want to tell you too much about it because it would ruin it. I feel like you need to go in knowing that it is a dark serial killer romance, and oh my god, the smut was on point, the storyline is on point, and it just is absolutely amazing. So if you are into dark romances, I would highly suggest picking up that series. I cannot wait to read Sophie Lark's backlist. All right, so now we're gonna go into officially my top 10. So my first one, we're gonna start at my 10 all the way down to number 1. These were all 5-star reads for me. Probably all of these are new all-time favorites. So the first one, it came in at a late time because I just read it this week, and that is Heartstopper Volume 4. So if you're not familiar, the Heartstopper series is by Alice Oseman. They are graphic novels. This is, again, the 4th, and we've just found out that the 5th one is going to be her last one in this, and I'm super sad, but this is my favorite Heartstopper one by far. If you're not familiar with it, it's about 2 boys, Charlie and Nick. We have one boy who is very comfortable with his sexual identity, who identified as gay. Our other main character is trying to discover who he is. In this book, he does say that he is bi. But what made this book so amazing to me is that one of our main characters is really dealing with an eating disorder and OCD. So definitely check the trigger warnings for that. But as someone who struggles with OCD, who has gone through an eating disorder and is always, you know, in the midst of, you know, battling that in some way, it doesn't ever permanently go away. I felt seen in this book, and I wish that I had this book when I was in high school. I got emotional because everything that they were saying about how, you know, that what you're saying when you're dealing with an eating disorder makes no sense, but your brain doesn't believe you. Like, that is me on a daily basis. So it literally makes me emotional talking about this because I've never felt more seen in a book, and that is why this is on here. Anyone who is struggling with OCD or an eating disorder that thinks that they can handle, which is important because at one point I would have not been able to read this book. If you think you can handle reading about it, I would say go read this book. Definitely make sure you're in the right place and mind to do it, because I know when I was in high school or even early college, I would have not been able to read about this, but I am at a place where I can, and I'm glad that I did. All right, so book number 9 is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. So I feel like this is on a lot of people's top 10 books of the year. This is a romance rom-com story we have based on 2 scientists. So we have our main character. Her name is Olive, and she is a PhD candidate, and she ends up being in this situation where she has to end up fake dating a professor or a doctor at the school that she goes to. And he's kind of like the grumpy kind of sunshine character. And it is a fake dating romance story. So you can go, you know, where it goes at. But this book is so funny. I found myself absolutely laughing out loud. I don't know if this is her first actual novel. I'm not 100% sure, but I know she has a ton of stuff coming out in 2021, some short stories, and then a follow-up novel to this one, and I cannot wait. So I'm very excited to read more of Ali Hazelwood's work in 2022. All right, so in my number 8 spot is an author that I quickly fell in love with this year, and that is Sarah J Maas, and it is Court of Mist and Fury, and this is part of the ACOTAR series. I binged this entire series in January, February, so I could read the newest book that came out this year. I think so, maybe like January, February. This is the second one in this series, and this is by far my favorite. It is absolutely huge. But if you're unfamiliar with this series, it's about a girl named Farah who is out in the woods, and she thinks she's killing a wolf, but she really wasn't. It was Fae. And as a punishment, she needs to go live now in the Fae world. And, you know, obviously that does not go well if she is a human living in a Fae world. It is a romance, fairy romance as well. This follow-ups to the first one, and the way the first one ends is such a cliffhanger. It picks up great in this book, and it is so action-packed. The characters are some of my favorite characters of all time, and yeah, definitely check this series out, even if you are nervous because it's a big series. I literally read all of them in about a month, so I highly recommend them. All right, so in my number 7 spot is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is a middle grade series, fantasy, absolutely amazing. Mari and her brother has recently gone missing, but no one's really pursuing it because he is an African-American young man who has been was hanging out with a rougher crowd. So no one really investigates this. So Amari is struggling with this. She's struggling being at school as well because she is a minority at school, and she gets, deals with some racism at her school. But one day she stumbles upon this weird thing, and it finds out that maybe her brother, there's more to the story, that he's disappeared, and he actually has some ties with this magical society. So she enters this magic school trying to find her brother, and it's just such a fun, awesome book. I feel like this can be read by any age. I want everyone to read this book. I actually bought this for a gift for my cousin for Christmas, and it's just perfection, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out. I've actually ordered a special edition from Waterstones. I'll be buying the American edition as well, and yeah, I cannot wait to see what adventures Amari and her friends go on to next. All right, book number 6 was a book that I read based off my girl Kirsten's recommendation, and now I'm obsessed. I want to read everything by this author, and that is The Great Alone by Kirsten Hanna. This is a historical fiction story about a family who is living in the 1960s, and our main girl, whose name is, Lenny, and her father fought in the war, and he came back, and he never was the same after that. So he's dealing with PTSD, but it really wasn't, PTSD wasn't really talked about or a thing back then. So he goes through a lot of things, their family up and down, and they're constantly moving, and he decides that they want to move to Alaska. So they move there, not really wanting to. He wants to be away from everyone. He thinks the world is, people are after him. And this shows the struggle of living with her father with an undiagnosed with PTSD, and the impact it has on her mother and herself, and wanting to leave. And it's just a great story, a coming of age historical fiction. I cried during this book. I laughed, and it's absolutely an amazing, heartfelt story, and I highly suggest, even if you're not a fan of historical fiction, I think the story is just great in its own. And yeah, so it follows our main character Lenny, from a child all the way to an adult, so into present day as well. So I absolutely love this book. All right, so now we're going to break down to my top 5, and this is where it gets really hard to sort where I want everything to be, but my top 5. Number 5 is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This has become my favorite thriller of all time, that number 1 spot. The twist in this story is something I still think about to this day. I had not seen this coming, and it will forever hold a special place in my heart. So Riley Sager himself is a great thriller author, even though I think his latest one is a kind of a disappointment. So this will be interesting because I have this on my top 10 books, and spoiler, his newest book is going to be on my most disappointing books. So quite polarizing, but This is about our main character. She's kind of in a rut. She has to leave her house because of, I think it was her boyfriend cheated or broken up or something. And so she's living with her friend, and she finds this ad in the newspaper or online for an apartment sitter at a really prestigious upscale apartment building in New York City. So she goes, interviews. It seems too good to be true. There's all these really odd rules that they have to follow. Like, you can have no guest over. And things start going strange. Some things show up, some people disappear, and things are not as it seems. So if you're going to read a thriller, I think, by Riley Sager, this is my favorite by far. Like I said, this twist in it was something I have never read before, and it will forever be on the top of my thriller reads and books of all time. All right, so book number 4, author we already mentioned earlier in this video, and this is going to be Colleen's Hoover, It Ends With Us. Again, I read this on Kirsten's recommendation. This romance story is everything to me, and I cried at this story. So we have our main character, Lily, who has had kind of a rough, not kind of, she did have a really rough upbringing. Her father was abusive, and she found kind of solace in this kid, which growing up with, was named Atlas. He was a homeless kid living in an abandoned house next to her. Things kind of got out of control with her dad with him, and she hadn't seen him for years. So she is now an adult living her life, and she has now with this man named Riley, who has some similar tendencies as her father. So things are obviously, it's not a healthy relationship, but she keeps, wanting to be with him, even though there's all these telltale signs that's leading the same pathway as her father was, when she was growing up. However, things go for a sudden change when the childhood love of her life, Atlas, reappears as an adult who's really got his life together. And she's kind of torn between Riley and Atlas, and the emotional impact this book has is just insane. Again, I felt a connection with our main character here, because having this realization that you think that the man in your life, the significant other, is going to change and it's temporary, and he apologized. I can relate to that. So I think I again felt myself a little bit seen in this book. So yeah, this book was just a phenomenal emotional ride, and my trying to read as much Colleen Hoover in 2022 as possible. All right, my top 3. Okay. Top 3, again, this is by another author we've already seen, and this is everything, and this is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. This is a chunky book, but I read it in like 3 days. This is her adult fantasy. It's an urban fantasy, and I just loved it. I was really nervous going into this because it's an adult fantasy, but I honestly found this easier to digest and understand at the beginning versus the ACOTAR series in some ways. But this book is just phenomenal. It is, like I said, it's an urban fantasy. So we have our main character, Bryce, who is half human and half fae, and she's, she's attending this magic school. It's set in the magic realm, I guess you could say. And something happens in the beginning of the book, and I don't want to say, and it sets her on a kind of an investigation with this angel, right? Fallen angel named Hunt. And it's so good. So it gives me CSI Cold Case vibes set in a fantasy world. I know that's a weird comparison, but it gives me all of those vibes, and I love this story. I love the mix of fantasy and the reality. They're on cell phones, but it's like a werewolf. I just loved it. There is a little bit of a romance kind of blooming in this story, and the sequel comes out this spring, I think, and I cannot wait to continue reading this book. I think this series, the sequel is going to be phenomenal, and I cannot wait to continue reading about Bryce's journey. And yeah, this book is just such a great fantasy story. So phenomenal. All right, now our top 2. So my top 2, okay. My second best book that I read this year, made me cry, laugh, all of the above, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Again, I was pushed to read this once again by Kirsten from Kirsten's Corner. This is a historical fiction book, and it takes place, we have our main character, her name is, why can't I think of her name? Monique Grant. I read this a couple months ago. So Monique Grant, she is a writer, and she's struggling a little bit. For a magazine, and for some reason, this Starlight Evelyn Hugo calls her to finally tell her story. And Evelyn's never talked about her story to any reporter before, but finally she decides that she is ready to talk about it, and she's ready to talk about it with this pretty much like no-name reporter. So we're trying, as we're reading this book, we're kind of figuring out as well why Evelyn picked Monique to be the reporter to tell her story. This goes back and forth between Evelyn Hugo. Chapters are when, during Evelyn Hugo's life, and then the other chapters are kind of more of a conversation present day with Evelyn and Hugo and things that else are there going around in the present day. I actually had to catch myself and remind myself that Evelyn Hugo is not a real person. So for me, a book that does that makes it feel so real, is a phenomenal writing. This is queer, and we are, trying to figure out who her 7 husbands are of Evelyn Hugo, and she does not end up with any of those 7 husbands, so we're trying to figure out who is actually also Evelyn Hugo's love of her life. And yeah, this is a great book. I think this is a book that you could give anybody, no matter what their genres are. I think it's just such a well-written book that it really could appeal to a lot of different people. All right, and now my favorite book, and this is actually a duology because they are tied, of the entire year. One of my favorite books now of all time. I have several editions. I've asked for Christmas more. I still have another Christmas to celebrate with my in-laws. I have paperback copies. I have Jade Edges editions, and I have pretty much branded my channel and my bookish life around this duology, and I'm sure no one will be surprised when I reveal this, but it is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This book and series, or duology, has literally changed my life, my bookish life. I know that probably sounds really dramatic, but it's 100% true. So this is the duology that follows up on the Shadow and Bones trilogy, which was really big this year because the Netflix series that aired on TV. But this book and this book is everything. So it's really hard to kind of explain it, but we have kind of a misfit group of people, teenagers, I would say, young adults, that have to come together. They're from all different sides of town to try to pretty much complete a heist together. And the characters are such different kind of misfits, and the found family in this book is just the most amazing thing I've ever read. Kaz is just, the characters in here I became so attached to. When I was finishing this one, I was reading it when I was getting my nails done, and I started crying in the middle of my pedicure. Like, that is how connected I was to these characters. I don't think I've read a book before where that connection was so strong, where I was like, they were real people to me. And that's like, means it must be pretty good. This book, I think about this series all the time. I have gotten things with the quotes on these, with sweatshirts that says Cutterdam on it. It's some of the best writing and reading I've ever done. The character development in this is so phenomenal. I love it. And I know some people don't go to these ones because they don't love the Shadow and Bone series, which that was around 5.5 stars, depending on which book you're talking about. For me, I would still give Six of Crows a chance because it just blows the Shadow and Bones trilogy out of the water. If you love found family, a heist, misfits working together, I highly suggest this one, and look at how pretty they are. So these are my top 10 books of 2021. I would love to hear what your top book was, or top 3 books, down in the comments below. I wonder if we have any of the same. So if you'd like to take this crazy journey with me, please make sure you press that subscribe button. If you never want to miss any of my content, make sure you hit that notification button. If you have been a friend on any of my other social media platforms, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, and all that information is linked down below. So stay kind, loves, and I'll see you next time. Bye!